each time I stand there, I know that my daughter is buried among 1,000 babies, and this is not what I would have chosen for her. She was alive for 5 days. She deserved more than a mass burial. Anyone deserves. There's 1 million people there, and there's 1 million stories to be told. Just see where it is. And why has Hart Island been such a secret?
Off the coast of the Bronx in Long Island Sound sits a small island where 1 million people are buried. But there's no grave markers with the names of the dead. There are no Memorial Day ceremonies for the veterans buried out there. There are no flowers on the graves. It is New York City's Potter's Field. It's the final resting place for people whose families were too poor for a private burial, people who died alone or in prison, infants, stillborns, people whose deaths threw their families into despair and chaos and just didn't know what to do and were lost in the system. And for 150 years, the place and the secrets it's told literally held under lock and key. The bodies are buried by prisoners, and it's run like a prison by the Department of Correction. It's easier to get to Rikers Island than it is to Hart Island. I was able to take a tour of Hart Island at a time when slowly the secrets of Hart Island, after 150 years, are starting to be told. Going into Hart Island, Island of Lost Souls. Now, besides Potter's Field, Hart Island has housed a Civil War prison for Confederate soldiers, a tuberculosis ward, an asylum, drug rehab facilities, a Nike missile base. Every building on this island is crumbling. This was a Phoenix House, a drug rehab center in the 60s and 70s. You can see big Phoenix, the rising Phoenix mural painted on the brick wall there. Each one of these stone markers represents 150 people, buried in 2 rows, 3 deep. Just a number. This one is 288. More recent markers are made out of PVC. There's not a lot of visible signs out here that this is even a cemetery. You do have this, a cross that was built by prisoners who work out here and who bury the bodies. The bodies are buried by prisoners. When they fill 150, they fill in the trench. We had to turn our cameras off when we went up to the trench, which was half full. So there were 3 stacked high bodies in this trench that had not been filled yet. One of the things that strikes me about this place is how incredibly peaceful it really is. Sad and peaceful at the same time. Melinda Hunt heads the Hart Island Project. This is an effort to catalog the people who are buried out there, tell the people's stories, and she's fighting to lift the stigma on a Potter's Field burial. She says having the facility run like a prison doesn't help.
A city burial just means that the family, for whatever reason, did not hire a private funeral director. That's what unclaimed means. It doesn't mean these people don't have families and people that didn't care. It's just that in New York City it's very easy to become disconnected, and a lot of times people just feel overwhelmed by a death, and they're not given very much time to make arrangements.
Herbert Swett's story is one of those. He was off fighting in Vietnam when his wife, 17 years old at the time, gave birth to twins. One of those twins, Aisha, died soon after childbirth. By the time he got home, his distraught wife had signed off on a city burial, not knowing what that meant.
Naturally, by her being so young and immature to the procedures and what is Hart Island and where is it, and they didn't inform her properly.
Elaine Joseph's baby, Tamika, is among those buried on Hart Island. Tamika was born prematurely at Beth Israel Hospital during the blizzard of 1978. Total chaos in the city. The baby was transferred to Mount Sinai for emergency heart surgery, but died of cardiac arrest.
They told me there's no staff in the morgue. Call back in a few days. I kept calling. It took like a week and a half, and they finally said, oh, the body's gone. I said, what do you mean the body's gone? They said, well, don't worry. The city will take care of it. She'll be buried with other babies and stillborns. My daughter's on Potter's Field. Potter's Field, the bums are buried there, indigents, people who had no families, unknowns. My daughter was not a bum. My daughter was not a pauper. She was a human being whose body got lost and got buried there, and her mother couldn't find her for 30 years. She doesn't deserve to have a stigma behind her. No one does.
Now, why did it take 30 years for Elaine Joseph to finally be able to visit the gravesite of her daughter? And why is Herbert Swett still waiting to visit his daughter's gravesite? We'll tell that story tomorrow as we look at the growing controversy over Hart Island and what it should become in the future.